Hello everyone, this is Matthew Scooby. Welcome back to my channel. Now I'm sure you read the title, before I say anything, just remember some of this is my opinion and some of this is in a way proven, but I'll explain that in a second. So anyways, I was talking to someone about the minimum wage in the US. And yes, this video generally applies to US wages, so if you're from another country, you probably shouldn't watch this video because it doesn't really apply to you. But anyways, there's a big argument about, like, should the U.S. wages go up or should they go down? So, there was a study shown recently, and I forgot which state one of it was in, or part of it was in, but one was in Pennsylvania. The study was in Pennsylvania, and there was a state right next to Pennsylvania. So, the thing was, the wage went up $1 across another state, whereas the minimum wage stayed the same in the other state. They found out that the other state was actually doing a lot better that had a higher wage. But in a way, this doesn't apply to all states. Because if you think about it, I used to live in Texas, and I lived in California, I lived in Hawaii. Hawaii and California are two of the most expensive states in the US, like by far. Unless you live in New York City, that's a different story. So, anyway, the wage was raised in California to $15 an hour, which in a way makes sense because California's living costs, the cost of living in California is insane. If you ever lived in California, you know what I'm talking about. You need at least 2 or 3 roommates just to get by in California. Paying your rent in California is insane. On top of that, the grocery costs, and oh my god, I can't even fathom. And you have all these expenses when it comes to driving your car, when it comes to parking meters and all that. Just all of it, in a way, adds up. But in a state like Texas, where I forgot what the actual wage set is in Texas, but it's definitely not $15 an hour. I'm from the great state of Texas, and I can tell you, if $15 an hour was raised in the state of Texas, prices would go up dramatically and people would struggle way more than they should. So, I used to live on my own in Texas also. So, the reason why I know that people would struggle in Texas if the wage did go up to $15 an hour, because my dad actually owns a restaurant in Texas, right? And there's a McDonald's right down the street, and this McDonald's, we both basically make we get around the same amount of customers, as far as we know. So, if we were to raise our wages to $15 an hour, and granted, restaurants are going by tips. However, I'm considering the fact that if we raise it to $15 an hour, just like McDonald's would pay its employees, if we were to pay our employees $15 an hour, half of those employees would be cut. Their hours would be cut too, and we would struggle because we would have no one to hire. What happens when you raise a wage is you become more picky about who you're choosing, because when you think about it, when you're a business or just you as a person, when you pay money to someone, you got to know if that person's reliable. That is one thing to consider. On top of that, if you realize how much it costs, the money and the demand that it costs that goes into the restaurant, basically half the money you make at a restaurant goes into your restaurant. That's not counting your employees. So I can understand what I'm saying, that raising the minimum wage in certain states, mainly like California, would make sense because the cost of living in California is already so demanding. However, if we were to raise it in Texas, so many people will lose their jobs and the prices will go up dramatically. But then there is the argument of what would happen if we lowered our wages. And again, this is my opinion, but also in a way it makes sense because I've heard other people say it too. If we were to lower our wage, let's say like maybe $7 an hour. Some people are willing to work for $7 an hour. So if we were to have a lower wage, employers would be more willing to hire employees and not be so picky about it. What this makes it better and more easier for younger people to get jobs. Because if the wage was raised higher, employers would be so picky about who they hire. Versus if the wage was actually lower, like, okay, well, I can pay this guy $5 or $7 an hour, and it wouldn't really affect me in the end. And if he doesn't work by the end of the month, I could just let him go, no big deal. However, when you're paying a high wage to an employee, you're making a big risk because you don't know if that employee is going to just leave. You don't know if he has like a drug problem, like, because every employee has some sort of problem and you have to deal with it. So another thing to consider is you got to think about all the companies that are across seas, countries like China. I'm currently in China. So basically it costs at least $1 to pay a regular Chinese employee. And if you think about it, the wage that's set in the US, that is almost 7 to 8 times more. It costs 7 to 8 times more to hire an American worker versus a Chinese worker. And then there's another argument that I think is a bullshit argument. They claim that Chinese workers are actually more skilled than American workers, which is partially true. However, I call bullshit because if you were to hire an American worker, you can spend 1 month to a couple of months training that employee to do the exact job that the Chinese workers are doing. So the reason why I'm mentioning this because Apple companies currently make their phones and other material in countries like Japan and China. So they're saying that American workers can't make Apple phones, basically. However, I call bullshit because a normal American person could make an Apple phone if you simply just train them. That is a given fact. And another thing that people say is that they do that to increase their profit margin. That's why the Apple phones are in China. Well, you can bring the companies back to the US. You would still increase your profit margins by simply selling the iPhones to China or Japan. So if we were to lower our wages to the point to where companies would consider bringing those factories back to the US, more people would have a better chance of getting a job. It would allow younger people a better chance to get better experience. To get more experience, they're able to go on and do other jobs. Because in the end, the minimum wage is exactly what it is. It's the minimum. The employer is most likely going to increase your pay if he finds that you're a reliable employee and he doesn't want you to leave. If he knows that you're reliable, he doesn't want you to leave, or he or she. So anyways, in the end, this is just my opinion, and it's also, some of it's based on fact and some of it's based on stuff that we haven't really tried yet. So anyways, guys, what do you think? You think the minimum wage should be up or down? I personally think that the US government should just leave wages alone. Get rid of wages and allow each state to make their own wages. In a way, I think that would work, but that's just an opinion of mine. So guys, make sure to leave a comment below if you want to argue with me or cuss at me. I'm just down there. I'll reply to you. I'm Matthew Scooby. I'll see you around. Peace out.